Stories from Upanishads, retold by Arghya Goswami.
Dear friends, hope you all are doing well. I hope you liked my previous episodes from Muktika Upanishad, in which you heard the conversation between Lord Sri Ramachandra and Lord Sri Hanuman. Today, I'll tell you about Maandukya Upanishad. But why? If you remember in my previous episode, when Lord Hanuman asked Lord Sri Ramachandra about Upanishads, he replied that only one Upanishad that one needs to know and understand is Maandukya Upanishad. So, friends, this one is the shortest of all major Upanishads, containing only 12 verses, but it is of paramount importance. This Upanishad is derived from Atharva Veda and was explained by Acharya Gaudapadacharya in 250 verses, which are arranged in 4 chapters known as Karikas. Acharya Gaudapadacharya was the guru of Acharya Govindapadacharya, who was actually the guru of Adi Shankaracharya. According to his commentary on the word Om begins the 4 treatises or Prakaranas or chapters which sums up the quintessence of Vedantic ideas. These 4 chapters or Prakaranas in this Karika are Agama Prakarana, Vaitathya Prakarana, Advaita Prakarana, Alata Shanti Prakarana. The Upanishadic portion without this Karika does not provide a full view of the philosophic system of Vedanta which seeks to interpret human knowledge as a whole. The Agama Prakarana or the first chapter seeks the dealing specifically Vedic text to indicate the traditional means to realization of essential nature of Atman and is devoted to determination of the meaning of Om. This has 12 mantras and 29 karikas. The Vaitathya Prakarana or the second chapter seeks rationally to demonstrate the unreality of duality or the illusion, which is the duality being destroyed and the knowledge of non-duality becomes evident. For instance, stop imagining a rope as a snake, then only the rope will reveal the real nature of it. This has 38 karikas and is based on Shruti, Yukti, Anubhava or experience and falsification of duality or plurality. The Advaita Prakarana or the third chapter is devoted to rational demonstrating of the truth of non-duality unless it should be unreal. This has 48 karikas and deals with the idea that only non-dual Brahman is real, which can be logically proven and everyone and everything in this universe can be negated except my own existence. So, pure existence is Brahman. Finally, the Alata Santi Prakarana or the 4th chapter is devoted to the rational refutation of the other schools of thought that present unvedic points of view and antagonist to the assertion of the truth of non-duality, which are opposed to the knowledge of Advaitic reality by pointing out their falsity on the account of their own mutual contradictions. This has 100 karikas proven that the world is an illusion. Note that the word prakarana is used here because Sri Adi Shankaracharya treated Maandukya Upanishad and his karikas not as a shastra or body of study but as a prakarana or treatise. A shastra view deals with varieties of topics, but a prakarana is a short manual which confines itself to some essential topics of shastra. All the arguments in this Upanishad ultimately point to the establishment of attributes of Brahman, thus serving the purpose of a prakarana. A prakarana has 4 indispensable elements or anubandha, namely the determination of the fitness of a student for the study of a treatise, which is called adhikari, the subject matter or vishay, which is the student will study, the mutual relationship or sambandha between the treatise and the subject matter, and the object to be attained by study, that is, its utility or prayojana. Before I continue, I think I must first discuss the Advaita concept of reality, which has been described at large in this Upanishad. This school of thought was propagated by Adi Shankaracharya and can be traced back to 6th or to 7th century CE. The word Advaita means non-duality. The Advaita conception of reality is undifferentiated homogeneous entity where the attributes point to the nature of the self or Atman. According to Advaita philosophy, Atman and Brahman are not different from each other. This was popularized by one of the Mahaavaakya of Upanishad, Ayam Aatma Brahma, or this self is Brahman. Ayam Aatma Brahma is the Anubhava Vakya or experiential sentence, where one has to experience this. Brahman is the fundamental reality underlying all objects and experiences. It is explained as pure existence, pure consciousness, pure bliss. Advaita means the absence of duality or illusion between the subject and the object. In our wakeful consciousness, we experience duality, but in deep sleep, there is only non-duality. Brahman is the one and only reality, and everything else is a mere appearance, projection, formation, or illusion. There are 3 levels of Advaita Vedanta regarding reality. They are Pratibhasika or subjective level, Vyavaharika or empirical level, and Paramarthika or ultimate spiritual level. Pratibhasika is the most unreal as dreams are at this level. Coming back to the podcast episode, the compilation of this Upanishad has some ambiguity. A large group of scholars thought that this Upanishad revealed Brahman to Rishi Maandukya, who was the composer of this Upanishad. The other group of thinkers believed that the meaning of Maandukya comes from the word Manduk or the frog. As we know that frog goes through a metamorphosis from a tadpole to a young adult, so it is a common metaphor for spiritual enlightenment showcasing spiritual growth in a person. A third group of scholars combine these two and speaks of Varuna, the god of water and sky, and the venerated Rishi himself taking a form of a frog to sing the praise of the cosmic vibration of Om. Basically, we do not know the correct reason why this is called Maandukya Upanishad. You can pick up any one of these 3 explanations as per your choice, as this is not the focus of this podcast. For ease of understanding, this is the most important Upanishad. For simple understanding, I have divided it into 2 parts. Part 1, which is today's episode, largely talks about 4 quarters of the self. Part 2, which I will record later on, I'll talk about Om. Also, to make the episode more engaging, I'm taking some creative liberty to represent this vast knowledge as a conversation between a revered teacher and his student. Let's begin today's story. Once a revered teacher said to his student, Hari Om, Om iti etad aksharam idam sarvam tasyopa vyakhyanam bhutam bhavat bhavishyad iti sarvam omkara eva yachanyat trikalatitam tad api omkara eva. This means, this letter Om is all this, all that is past, present and future is verily Om. That which is beyond 3 periods of time is also indeed Om. The whole world, whatever you can see, perceive, feel and understand is that imperishable sound, that cosmic vibration which is Om. It is what has been, what it is, and what it will be. It is beyond these three periods of time, and even beyond the time itself is Om. It is Ekakshara Brahma, or one sound, which is the explanation of Om. What was in the past is in the present, and what it will be in the future. It is Om. It has both manifested state and an unmanifested state. In the manifested state, it is gross and subtle, but there is no concept of time. When it is in unmanifested state, it is at the causal state. Also, note that time arises only when the sequence of experiences or anubhava begins. So, you experience a day, noon, or night. The sequence of time moves on. Om is beyond Prakriti or three periods of time, beyond Purusha. So, Om is the combination of Prakriti and Purusha, where Prakriti is manifested sound and Purusha is the unmanifested sound, where silence manifests as Shanti, which is the basis of all sounds. So, all this is Om. Friends, before I continue today's story, let me bring in an interesting perspective. You may have heard the mantra of Guru Nanak Dev Ji, Satnam Ek Omkar, which means real name one Om. Om is all this. It clearly means that Brahman or the Supreme Self denoted by the syllable Om is all this. Every object has a name. The name and the object denoted by it are identical. All objects are not different from their names. And the connection between Shabda or sound and Artha or the object is inseparable. The names and the forms are inseparable. If you remember, in my earlier episode, I told you about the story of Brahma when he had desired to become many. That was Brahma Sankalpa. There was the spandan or vibration from which the creation became. This vibration or the sound symbol is Om. So Om is inseparable from Brahman. If you know, Om is also Brahman. Now, coming back to the story, the student with folded hands asked the teacher to explain it further. The teacher smiled and recited perhaps one of the most important verses or one of the Mahaavaakya from the Upanishad. Sarvam haitad Brahma, Ayam Aatma Brahma, Soyam Atma Chatuspat. This means all this is surely Brahman. This self or Atman is Brahman. The self or Atman has 4 quarters or parts. Friends, does it ring a bell? Remember in the story of Satyakama, he was taught all 4 quarters or parts of Brahman by non-human teachers. So, if you now relate that, there is no difference between Atman or self and Brahman or supreme self. Coming back to the story again, the teacher continued to explain the verse in detail. Sarvam etad, that all is this, that was spoken of as Om is Brahman. So Om is the name and the Brahman is the substance or reality indicated by Om. The student was inquisitive and asked, "Oh my Guru, please explain me, what is Brahman?" The teacher said, "Ayam Aatma Brahma," which means Atma is Brahman. Therefore, all Atmas are Brahma Rupa or Akshara Rupa, which is glorified in the verse Ayam Aatma Brahma. Thus, it has always been established that one must identify the Atma as being Brahma Rupa. Then the student asked again, "Oh sir, how to realize one's Atman as being Brahman?" The teacher answered, "For this, one must first know it to be separated from the 3 bodies that are causal, subtle, and physical or gross, and the three states of Atman, that is, walking or Vishwa state, dream or Tejasa state, and deep sleep or Pragya state. These bodies and states are tied to Atman. So Atman is Brahman, which is separate from these bodies and states. Thus, we first must understand these three states and then understand the fourth state, which is the Brahmic state or Turiya, so that we can separate from them. That's why it states Ayam Aatma Chatuspath, which means four states. Eventually, the smaller units lose their individuality into the bigger ones. So the Vishwa merges into Tejasa, Tejasa merges into the Pragyan, and Pragyan into Turiya. The student scratched his head, unable to comprehend, and asked, "Oh sir, can you please explain me these four states in detail?" The teacher smiled and replied, "Oh Soumya, the first state is the wakeful state or Jagrita, in which you and I are present. In this state, the Atman or self is turned outwards, conscious of only the external world. It is busy engaging with it, interacting with it, consuming it, processing it, and making sense of it. In this state, the Atman is Vaishvanara or the Universal One, the Virat or the Cosmic Being. It implies that when Jivatma knows Pragyana, the outer objects, such a state is attributed to aging, size, or individuality. The external objects are in contact with the gross physical body and the sphere of action, whose consciousness relates to the all external things and objects. The waking state is the address and sphere of all activities of the Virat Purusha. As Vaishvanara in the body, the Atma in the wakeful state is the doer of all body's actions, the thinker of all mind's thoughts, the consumer and enjoyer of all material things which can consume via its 19 mouths and 7 limbs. The 19 mouths comprise 5 Jnana Indriyas or sense organs such as tongue, nose, eyes, ears and skin, 5 Karma Indriyas such as Vak or speech, hands, legs, Upastham or organ of reproduction, and Payu or the organ of excretion, 5 Pranas such as Prana, Apana, Udana, Vayana and Samana, and 4 Antahkaranam or the inner organs such as Manas or mind, Buddhi or intellect, Chitta or consciousness, and Ahamkara or ego that mistakes the body and the mind and the intellect for Atma, cause them I, and the memory Chitta, which remembers and forgets selectively and thus influences the mind and intellect. The 7 limbs of Virat Purusha are the sky, sun, moon, earth, space, heaven, and the ocean. The teacher paused, and it ignited another question in the student's mind, and he immediately asked, "Sir, who is Virat Purusha?" The teachers replied calmly, "Basically, Virat Purusha is not the self or the physical body, but he is one with the total universe and cosmos. One who is identified with the society and community or a nation. Such a person is called Virat Purusha." Just to understand the identity of Vishwa with Virat is a suggestive of the unity of Tejasa and Pragya with Hiranyagarbha and the unmanifested state as well. This state is also described in Madhu Brahmana of Muktika Upanishad. Before we move on, friends, I would like to quickly touch upon the 4 quarters of Brahman. Virat Purusha is the gross cosmic world which makes the first part of Brahman. The second part of Brahman is the subtle cosmic world which is called Hiranyagarbha. The third part or quarter is the cosmic world in the causal state, as in unmanifested state, and where it is freed from all states or causes and effects and exists merely as a substratum of all existence, knowledge, bliss, and is the fourth quarter of Brahman, the state where there is no causes in simple terms. The student then asked his guru, "O Guru, can you please tell me about the next state of consciousness?" The Guru replied to his student, "O Saumya, the next state of consciousness is the dream state or swapna. In this state, the senses are withdrawn and have opportunity to look inward. In this state, the Atman is Tejasa or the illuminated one. In swapna or dream state, the mind constructs a dream world from all the inputs it has received from the material and physical world in the wakeful state, and all the actions and the desires that have left their impressions on it. The Jivatma experiences a variety of objects in the dream world. This dream world one hopes, deepest fears, some never acknowledged in the wakeful state, some come up to the surface. All their unfulfilled wishes are fulfilled in this dream state, the state in which the sleeping Jivatma does not know pragyana or outer objects during the wakeful state, but knows the inner objects or antaha is the dream state. In the dream state, the Shushma Sharira is active. The body is not on an individual level but at a subtle level which is called Tejasa, so as the mind which is also in a subtle mind level or Hiranyagarbha. In this state, the entire cosmos is at the subtle mind level. One is not conscious of the physical body. When we see a dream, neither the five organs of action nor the five sense organs are active, but the inner organs such as the mind and intellect are active. Something to ponder upon, friends. Pure consciousness is identified by total cosmos, which comprises Virat Purusha, Vaishvanara, and Vishwa, and the total mind, which is comprised of Hiranyagarbha and Tejasa. So, there is no distinction between individual and the total mind. The student's eye was glowing. He wanted to know more. With folded hands, he again asked his guru about the third state of consciousness. The teacher continued, "O dear one, the third state of consciousness is the deep sleep. It is called the Shushupti or the state of deep sleep. In this state of deep sleep, where the sleeper does not desire any enjoyable or physical things and does not see any dreams. In this sphere, everything is undifferentiated. In this state, the mind thinks no thoughts, dreams no dream, and feels no desire. In this state, the Atma is in state of pragya or the knowing one, withdrawing everything such as senses, mind, memory, imagination, all thoughts and all actions into itself. The Atma is at last at rest. In deep repose, the sleeper is merely a mass of consciousness who abounds in bliss, who is surely an enjoyer of bliss, and who is the doorway to the experience of dream and waking state. Since all distinction vanishes, the self does not see itself as I. It cannot see the other as different as you. As I merges into you, so does the subject merges into the object, the seer into the seen, this into that, until at last there is only one. As pragya, the self consumes nothing but continues to enjoy not materialistic thing as in Jagrita state, not imaginary things in Swapna state, but very deep bliss or Ananda. This is also called Pragyanagna, a mass of consciousness, since this is characterized by the absence of discrimination. He is Anandamaya. or full of joy. His abundance of joy being caused by the absence of misery involved in the effort of mind vibrating as the objects and their experiencer. But he is not bliss itself, since the joy is not absolute. He is called Sitamukha because consciousness appears as empirical experience in this doorway to the states of dream and wakefulness. He is called Pragyanaha or conscious par excellence, since in him alone there is the knowledge of the past and future and of all things. Even though lying in the deep sleep, he is called Pragyana because of his having been so earlier in the two states of dream and wakefulness, or he is called conscious since he is alone and is possessed in a peculiar characteristic of mere undiversified consciousness. This pragya or the third state of Atman, pragya is the total standpoint of Ishvara. Then the teacher paused and again said, the total being with respect to the physical world is called Virata Vaishvanara. With respect to the total mind is called Hiranyagarbha. And with respect to the state of creation is called Ishvara. Then he recited the verse Isha Sarveshwara Isha Sarvagna Esho Antarayami Esha Yonihi Sarvasya Prabha Vyapyayayu Hi Bhutanam, which means this is the Lord of all, this is the knower of all, this is the inner controller, this is the source of all, and this is that form which all things originate and in which they finally dissolve themselves. This pragya, when in his natural state, is surely Sarveshwara or the Lord of all the diversity inclusive of heavenly world and contrary to what others believe in. He is not something intrinsically different from this one, as is borne out by the Vedic text. O Saumya, the mind is tethered to the vital force which is Brahman. Vishwa experiences the external things and is all pervading, but Tejas experiences the internal things. Similarly, Pragya is the mass of consciousness. It is but the same entity that is thought in three ways. The transcendence of the three states by the self, its unity, purity, and unrelatedness to anything is proved by the fact of the existence in the states of succession and of its being interlinked by the memory as I. This is born out of the illustration of the great fish in the ancient text. The student interrupted the teacher and asked, Sir, what is that illustration? Please tell me. Although the teacher was a bit disturbed, as his flow of thoughts was broken by this inquisitive student, but he appreciated his question. He smiled and replied, O Saumya, in Brihadaranyak Upanishad, I have told you about it. It is the time to recollect that illustration. It says that as a great fish swims alternately to both the banks of the river, so does the infinite being move to the both sides of the states, that is, in the dream and waking state. Vishwa is met with the right eye, which is the place of existence. Tejasa is inside the mind, and Pragya is in the space within the heart. In all three ways, he exists in the body. Please note that Vishwa exists equally in all organs. However, he specifically referred to existing in the right eye. The soul, with its abode in the right eye, perceives some form and then closes the eyes and recollecting that very form sees it manifested. Manasi Antaha, inside the mind, in the form of impressions as in a dream. This is how Tejasa is met in the waking state or Vishwa. Vishwa and Tejasa are same, for the same entity that sees as Vishwa recollects as Tejasa. As in the case here, so it is in the dream. Therefore, though Tejasa is within the mind, he is really same as Vishwa. On the abeyance of the activity called memory, Pragya, sitting in the space within the heart, becomes free from the diversity of objects and their perceiving subject, and continues to be the mere mass of consciousness, for then there is no functioning of mind. This is how pragya is met with the waking state or vishwa, and when the mind ceases to act, the same entity assumes the characteristics of pragya. The perception and recollection are the vibrations of the mind, and in the absence of these, there is mere existence in an unmanifested state in the heart, in identification with the vital force. Taijasa is same as Hiranyagarbha because of his existence in the mind as declared by the Vedic text. Taijasa is conditioned by the individual mind and Hiranyagarbha by the cosmic mind. But individual and cosmic minds are the same, so Taijasa and Hiranyagarbha must be the same. Hiranyagarbha, as possessed by the power to act, is the soul within the subtle body, that is Linga, and Linga is equated with the mind as per the Vedic text. Therefore, Tejasa and Hiranyagarbha are same, and Hiranyagarbha is a special manifestation of Purusha identified with the cosmic mind, and Tejasa resides in the mind. Therefore, they are same. The enjoyment is threefold, as the Vishwa enjoys the gross body, Tejasa enjoys the subtle body, and Pragya enjoys the bliss. The student felt enlightened by the knowledge of these three states of consciousness. He asked his Guru, "O Guru, what is the fourth state of consciousness then?" The teacher explained the fourth state of consciousness. He said, "O Saumya, know that the fourth state is not conscious of the internal world, nor it is conscious of the external world. It is not conscious of both worlds, nor a mass of consciousness, nor it is conscious or unconscious. It is unseen, beyond empirical dealings, beyond any grasp, not direct, unthinkable, undescribable, whose valid proof consists of single belief in the self, in which all phenomena ceases, and which is unchanging, auspicious, and non-dual. That is self, and that is to be known." Saying this, the teacher paused and again said to his student, "The true nature of the rope is realized through the negation of the illusion of a snake. So, the very self-conscious in the three states is sought to be established as Turiya, as described in the Mahaavaakya, Tattvam Asi." The teacher continued to explain. So let's consider the rope is imagined to be a snake. The self too, though one is imagined in three states. These are possessed of such attributes as consciousness of the internal world. Therefore, there remains no need to search for any other means of knowledge or any other discipline like constant thinking for realization of Turiya. This is similar to what happens in the case of knowledge of the rope, where the elimination of a snake from the rope occurs simultaneously with discrimination between the rope and the snake. On the contrary, those who hold the view that in the act of knowing the pot, for instance, an instrument of knowledge engages in some other activity in addition to the removal of the darkness from the pot. Similarly, it may be well held that in the matter of splitting wood, as the act of splitting does something to the two parts in addition to the removal of the bonding of the wooden fibers. On the other hand, if it's true that the means of knowledge is engaged in distinguishing between a pot from the darkness, fulfills its goal by merely removing the unwanted darkness, just as the act of cutting the wood into two pieces by breaking the molecular bondage between the two parts of the wood. Just in the case of Turiya, it is nothing but valid knowledge arising from negation and intended to separate such ideas as being conscious of the internal world that is superimposed on the self. It has no other action on Turiya apart from eliminating unwanted attributions like being conscious of the internal world simultaneously with the abeyance of the unwanted attributes. There are eradication of such distinctions as the knower, the known, and the knowledge. Thus, it is said that duality ceases to exist after realization. Thus, the instrument of knowledge fulfills the purpose of removing the darkness of ignorance from its object. Thus, all evils, such as being conscious of the internal world superimposed on the self, cease simultaneously with all the application of the instrument of illumination, which is nothing but a valid knowledge arising from negation of duality. Nantaha pragyanam, which means not conscious of the internal world, is eliminated by Tejasa. Na bahish pragyanam, which means not conscious of the external world, is eliminated by Vishwa. Na ubhayataya pragyanam, which means not conscious of ether, is eliminated by intermediate state between dream and waking. Na pragya naghanam, which means not a mass of consciousness, is denied by the state of deep sleep, for this consists in a state of latency where everything becomes indistinguishable. Na pragyanam, which means nor conscious, is denied by being aware of all objects simultaneously by the single act of consciousness. Na apragyanam, which means nor unconscious, is negated by insentience. Friends, that was all for today's episode. This was the end of part 1, where the teacher explained to his student about the 4 states of consciousness. In the part 2, in the next episode of Maandukya Upanishad, the teacher will continue his discussion on Om. So, please tune in to your favorite show, Stories from Upanishads, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcast, Amazon Music, and many other podcast players. The good news is that it is now also available in Stitcher, Blueberry Podcast, and many other podcast players. You can also listen to them in my exclusive website https://www.storiesfromupanishads.com. Furthermore, as a bonus, you can also read through some of my interesting blogs and also shop from Exotic India, which is India's leading online store where you can find rare books, brass articles, idols, and many other articles. Please do write to me in my email arghyathinks@gmail.com, which is arghyathinks@gmail.com. I do exchange many ideas and concepts with my fellow listeners, and we both learn from each other. As always, I request you to follow, like, share, download this podcast series, and also spend some time putting in your valuable views, reviews, and comments wherever possible. These small actions will really help me and motivate me further. So, until then,
Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Source content collected from various books on Upanishads, such as Messages of the Upanishads by Swami Ranganathananda, Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad by Swami Madhavananda, 8 Upanishads from Advaita Ashrama, Upanishads.org, Vedas and Upanishads for Children by Rupa Pai, and several other write-ups and thoughts on Upanishads. Background music is sourced from various royalty-free music sources, Apple Loops, Internet Archives with non-commercial 4.0 international license. Om Shanti chants are from YouTube source Gaia Sanskrit. This podcast was conceptualized, scripted, narrated, and audio designed by Arghya Goswami.